Hey guys, it's Ernesto, and I just wanted to make this quick video about the gear that I use during a wedding. And it will surprise you that I do not use a lot of gear during the wedding. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Now, the very first item that I use is a camera, obviously. Now, the camera that I shoot with is a Canon 5D Mark III. That's the camera that I have, and that's the one that I use. I also own a 5D Mark II, which is the one that I'm recording on right now. So those are the two cameras that I currently own. However, on the day of the wedding, I only use the 5D Mark III, but I get a second 5D Mark III. I generally rent that body. I generally rent that body because it just helps me to be a little bit more quicker and faster on the day of the wedding. And here's what I mean by that. So on the day of the wedding, by having two bodies, I basically do two things with those bodies, or have two items on those two bodies that basically helps me be more efficient and faster. So the first thing that I have on one of the bodies is a 24-70 lens. That's the first body that I would have, and that's generally like my secondary body, not my the main body. So on the main body, I generally have my 70-200, and that's how I generally start out the day. I generally have those two lenses on those two separate bodies, just so it can help me with my focal length. It just gives me a variety of focal lengths that I could choose on the day of the wedding. Now, having that flexibility is awesome. It makes you a lot more efficient and faster. Now, the second reason I have an additional body is basically because if the main body was to die, or any technical issues that I may encounter with that body, I could simply switch to the secondary body and quickly continue to do the job that I was hired for. So that's the reason I have those two bodies. All right, so now let's talk about the lenses that I use on the day of the wedding and why I use each lens, okay? So I already talked about the 70-200 and the 24-70. So let's dive into a little bit more of why I use the 70-200, the 24-70, and I also have the 85, and I rent a 100 macro because I generally don't use a 100 macro, but I rent that for the day of the wedding. So let's go down why I use each lens. So for the 70-200 lens, at the beginning of the wedding, which is the getting ready session, that is my primary lens that I use, the 70-200. It takes incredible portraits, and you guys know, if you watch the channel and watch all the videos that I've done in the past, you will know that the 70-200 is my go-to lens. I generally use that lens all the time. If I had the option, I would just shoot with that lens for the entire wedding. However, I just generally use that lens for portraits. It's very, very helpful for portraits. For the bride, the groom, family portraits is also great. If I have that enough room in the hotel or wherever I'm at, if I have enough room, that is the lens that I'm going to use, and I'm going to shoot with that to capture, pretty much, 90% of the wedding if I need to. Okay, so that's my go-to lens. Now, the 24-70 lens comes in handy for the following situations. So if I need a wider shot, or I don't have enough room to back up, like the 70-200 doesn't give me enough room, to basically, work if it's a close environment, then that focal length won't allow me to basically capture enough of maybe like a family portrait that I'm trying to capture or something. So what I generally utilize would be the 24-70 lens, which would give me that wide enough reach to include everyone. So that's why I would use the 24-70 lens. Now, with respect to the 85, now the 85, I use this lens very sparingly. Although I'm using it right now on this 5D Mark II. I use this lens for creative portraits. So this lens has a very, very shallow depth of field. So this lens comes in handy for two reasons, because this lens is a 1.2 lens, and it comes in handy for two reasons. One, it comes in handy if I don't have enough light in the room and I don't want to use a flash or anything like that. Shooting at 1.2 gives me a lot of light, and it also adds, you know, some creative flair to the image as well. So that's one reason I would use this type of lens. So the second reason I would use it is if the room is a little bit messy and I don't feel like basically getting rid of anything, you know, putting that 1.2 would basically make all of those items in the background, you know, pretty much melt away. And it also will create a very, very beautiful image. So that's the reason I would use the 85. And lastly, the 100 macro. Now, the last wedding I shot, I realized that I didn't even use that 100 macro. However, the reason I utilize this 100 macro is that for shooting details, you know, like generally sometimes the bride would want, you know, you to shoot, you know, their shoes separately, their dress or a ring or whatever, all that stuff separately, which I don't generally like to do. I don't like to shoot those things separately. I'd rather shoot them on the bride, you know, when they're wearing it. So I would utilize my 70-200 for that, to basically shoot those types of details. But if they're requested and they want it, then I would shoot, you know, those items independently with the 100 macro to get all those details from those items utilizing that 100 macro. Like I said, I don't utilize this lens too often because I don't like shooting that type of those types of details. But if required, I'd have it just in case. And it's always better to have it than not to have it. And then you'll be, you know, when you request it to do something like that, you won't have the tools to do what you need to do. So those would be the four lenses that I carry with me on the day of the wedding. And I don't carry any other lens. That's it. Those are the four lenses that I work with on the day of the wedding. And the primary two lenses that I use for the entire wedding would be the 70-200 for the most part, and the 24-70 comes in handy more towards the ceremony and, you know, like the reception. So that's where the 24-70 will come in handy. But for the most part, I generally utilize my 70-200 for the entire wedding. All right, guys, so now let's move on to the light. So what do I carry with me to help light my subjects during a wedding? So in my camera bag, I have 4 flashes. Now, do I need 4 flashes? No. Do I use all 4 flashes? No. But it's very, very handy to have all 4 just in case I want to use it and I need it for any technical reasons. So if I wanted to be very, very creative, like I have time or I have, you know, help and hands to help me hold all these different lights, I would definitely use all 4. But what I tend to end up doing is utilizing at least one, right? Now I use one flash on top of my camera for like the ceremony, the reception. That's usually on the top of my camera, right? So if you guys watch my on-camera flash tutorial, you will know exactly how I utilize that on-camera flash to help create my portraits to add more depth and dimension to it. So if you haven't watched that tutorial, go ahead and watch it. So that's the first thing. So during the getting ready, what I generally do when I'm working with the bride is I tend not to utilize any flash during that time, but what I would utilize instead is my ice light. So I also take my ice light as well with me to help me work with the bride. Now, if I don't have any assistants or a second shooter on the wedding, what I would generally do is I would basically have, you know, anybody that's in the room, you know, a family member, the father, the brother, whoever it is that's in the room, they then become my second assistant. So they will hold the ice light and help me, you know, basically create a portrait of the bride. So that's what I would use there. When I'm working with the groom, however, I would tend to utilize flash for the groom, and, you know, maybe the best man or one of the, you know, members of the party will come in then and basically be my assistant for that portrait session with the groom. Now, I generally also utilize a flash bender when I'm doing those portraits. Now, this is obviously utilizing off camera flash. This is not on camera, this is off camera flash. So I utilize off camera flash to help create those portraits when I'm working with the groom. All right guys, now let's get into the last item, which is the very most important item, second to the camera body. The most important item that I take with me during a wedding. Now that item is a memory card. Now I once saw a photograph on Instagram of a photographer that basically captured an image of, he just finished a wedding and he captured an image of a whole bunch of memory cards. I'm talking about maybe like 10 to 20 different memory cards that he captured in the image, and he basically said, you know, wedding well done, something to that effect. I forget the exact quote, but basically he's alluding to the fact that all these memory cards, which is, you know, the 10 to 20 different type of memory cards, were the end result of the wedding that he just did. So that's how many memory cards he takes. For me, I only take 2 memory cards. One that's in my main camera body and the other that's in the secondary camera body. Of course, I do carry, you know, spare memory cards just in case, you know, these memory cards for whatever reason die. But that's it. Those are the 2 memory cards I utilize. I put them into my camera body and I don't take them out. I shoot from the beginning of the day, which is in the morning, and I shoot till the evening on this one memory card. Well, the 2 memory cards, right? These are 32 gig memory cards, and I do not shoot JPEG. Actually, I do shoot JPEG now. The 5D Mark III could utilize 2 memory cards, basically this one and a smaller one. And on that second memory card, I basically captured JPEG images so I can upload those JPEG images quickly into my computer so I can do the same day. But on this memory card, it's all raw images. So for me, when shooting, I'm very selective. So I generally end up with about roughly, you know, 800 to 900 or 1,000 images, around that number. So 8 to 1,000 roughly. Now, the reason I don't like to go over that number is because when I come back and I'm looking at the images in post, I don't want to be looking at 2,000 images, 3,000 images. To me, that's just maddening, and it would just not make it fun for me at all. So I try to keep my number low. It's not on purpose, you know, meaning like if I have a wedding and there's something that's happening in front of me, I'm just not gonna shoot it because, hey, in the back of my head, I don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna capture like 2,000 images. I will capture important events on the day of a wedding, but I'm not gonna capture everything, you know, I'm just gonna capture what I feel is important from my perspective and what I feel that it will be important to the bride and groom and their family. I haven't really shot that much weddings, but for all the weddings that I did shot, I know enough of the process to capture important events. You know, when you start doing these things, it just becomes a little bit repetitive. You kind of come to expect certain things to happen and certain things to unfold. Obviously, every type of wedding may have like a different theme, but the underlying story is still the same. At the end of the day, they're gonna go and they're gonna get married and they're gonna have a nice reception and you're gonna capture all of this. It's just a matter of how you capture it, what you're looking for, you know, little unique things that maybe happen here and there in every different wedding. So you look for these things. So that's what I've come to expect over time. Little things that would be a little bit unique to each wedding, I will capture that. But overall, I know exactly what I'm looking for and I will capture those things. So that's why my images tend to be around, you know, 800 to about 1,000 images, because I'm very selective in what I shoot. Now, do you guys need to shoot roughly 800 to 1,000 images? No. If you like to shoot 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 images for your wedding, then please go ahead and do so. But for me personally, when I go back to post and I look at all of these images that I have to to work through. It would just be maddening. All right, that's it. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. I know this was my own personal perspective of how I handle a wedding and what gear I take with me. But you know, this is by no means a guide to say, hey, drop everything that you're doing and do it my way. No, this is not what this video is about. This video is about only from my perspective, which I hope would basically help out anybody else that's hoping to work in a very minimal way and travel lightly. This is how I work. I try to not, burden myself with a whole bunch of gear, because it becomes very, very frustrating to work on the day of the wedding for me, to carry about a whole bunch of gear. A whole bunch of big lights and stuff like that is very frustrating, and it makes your footprint on the day of the wedding a little bit more present than you want it to be. So if I could do my job that I was hired to do in a way that is not very intrusive to the guests, where I don't make a big production of why I'm there, what I'm doing there. If I'm drawing the attention away from the main subjects, which is the bride and the groom, with all my flashy gear, then that becomes a problem. I don't want people to pay attention to me. I want people to pay attention to the main subjects, which might be the bride and groom, or whatever event you might be shooting at the time. So that's why I travel the way I travel. So that's it. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. If it was, hit that like button, share this video with your friends and family. Put some comments down below and let me know what you guys shoot with, how you guys handle a wedding, how many images you guys end up with on the end of the wedding and how you deal with it. So put those comments down below. And guys, if you got this far in the video, please, subscribe to the channel, because you're gonna get a lot more videos like these. So again, I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.